Welcome to Twist Grip Tales. My name is Bruce Wally, and we've got a very special guest, not in Melbourne, Australia, no, but somewhere north of New York City, and this is Ultan Guilfoyle. This man is responsible for the huge exhibition that was on in 1998 at the Guggenheim, along with Charles Falco. And in Australia at the moment, up in Queensland, we have the QAGOMA exhibition. As per the catalogue book up here, we'll have a talk about that. But I want to explore Ultan. Welcome. Yes, welcome. Let's explore Ultan the man.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you.
You've got a...
Yes, well, Bruce the man, Ultan the man. I'm delighted to be here with you. Your legend travels far, and your fame has traveled to this neck of the woods, which is the Western Catskill Mountains, about 2.5 hours northwest of New York City, as I mentioned earlier in an email to you. This is where I'm lucky enough to have a second home with my family. We come up here. And of course, during the pandemic, this was a lifeline because we were able to escape New York City, which at the beginning of the pandemic was really bad and still is. I mean, we're amazed by your success at dealing with the pandemic because you knocked it on the head from the beginning. We didn't do that. So we have a second wave or maybe even a third wave now. So we're having a problem. But in any case, we're here safe and sound in the snowy forests of the Catskills while you're there in the middle of your summer in Melbourne. And I'm delighted to be with you through this intriguing technology.
It is amazing that despite COVID, we can talk halfway around the world. So Ultan Guilfoyle, gosh, that is a very, very strong name. Where do the roots of Ultan Guilfoyle come from?
Well, Bruce, it's a Gaelic name. I'm from Dublin in Ireland. Ultan is the Gaelic name for Ulsterman. I'm not from Ulster, I'm from Leinster, but my mother decided to play a little joke on me that I might appreciate later in life. Guilfoyle is a classic Irish Gaelic name like Gilpatrick or Gilfillan. So yes, I'm Irish. I live in New York City, have done for over 25 years. But as you can tell from my accent, you can take the man from the bog, but you can't take the bog from the man.
Well, let me just give you a more formal welcome, Ultan, with a Conas Atatu Haig.
Oh, I'm delighted. Conas Atatu Tome Gama Gahanava Erfad, Bruce. So that meant my response was, you asked me, how are you, Ultan? And I said, I'm well. I'm very well, Bruce.
Well, Sláinte. I've got Irish roots. I think my family came from County Cork and Donegal back in the convict days. But yes, that's another story. So tell me, Ultan, where did the love of motorcycling get into your blood? Where did you start getting the petrol in your head and the oil in your veins?
Well, Bruce, that's a very good question. And actually, there are two answers to that, really. One is just the motorcyclist in me. The other is the person who does this, right? This design exhibition. The motorcyclist in me comes from bicycles, simple as that. So we grew up on bicycles in Dublin. It was our only way to escape. We went to school on our bicycles. We delivered our newspapers on bicycles. We went everywhere on our bicycles. And then when we came home from school and before we got settled down to our homework, we would flee on our bicycles up to the nearest field and play football or rugby or ride our bikes as if they were trials bikes or scramblers. We didn't have mountain bikes in those days. I often say that my life would be very different if I had a mountain bike when I was 10 years old. But in any case, we rode our bikes everywhere. And as soon as we could, when we got into our teens, we were looking for a little bit of, oomph. We wanted to get somewhere faster. And so my first motorcycle was an NSU Quickly, which was a 50cc moped, a two-stroke, of course. And I didn't understand two strokes. I bought it from a friend of mine, a classmate of mine. And I think he wasn't properly allowed to sell it. I think it was his aunt's, and he probably got into trouble for selling it. But in any case, I got it. I did some heroic laps around our orchard in Dublin before I seized it, not realizing that I had to put oil in the tank. So that was my first motorcycle. Yes, oh yes. And so that was my first introduction to motorcycle sport, you might say, or to having a motorcycle. And from then, of course, you know, as boys, we're all horsing around on bikes and then motorcycles. And before long, we're riding trials and riding scrambles. And so that was my introduction to motorcycles. And it was a very low-key, low-value. We weren't wealthy. We scrambled for whatever we could, and we put it together, basically. And you know, I rode my trials bike out to a trial. I rode it in the trial, and then I rode it home, you know. So that was the way it was. And that was my first introduction to motorcycles, really. And it didn't stop until I went to college. Once I went to college, I had to surrender my bike because I couldn't afford it anymore. And I played rugby instead. But my love of bikes stayed with me.
So what was your trials bike? That wasn't your NSU Quickly?
No, the NSU Quickly was so useless. I mean, the name was fantastic, NSU Quickly, but I mean, it only went slowly. I mean, the Germans have a funny sense of humor about these things. My trials bike was an Ossa Mick Andrews replica, the MAR as it's known, and it has a green stripe in the tank. It's rather beautiful with a four-leaf clover as a symbol. And of course, the shamrock is the symbol of Ireland, so the four-leaf clover appealed to me. It wasn't a great bike, to be frank. In those days, the early trials bikes, the best of them were Bultacos and Montesas, with Ossa third. But, you know, I came to know the people at Ossa, the Giro family, later when I was doing the Art of the Motorcycle at the Guggenheim. A wonderful family in and around Barcelona in Spain. And of course, that's where trials, the modern trials that we know from Bultaco and Montesa and Ossa grew. And that grew into Gas and all of those great, the Bultaco, the Sherco and so on, the Beta, they all grew out of that same tradition in Spain. So we owe a lot to Spain for those off-road bikes. But in any case, that was my introduction to motorcycles, and it went on from there, and it still goes on. I've got motorcycles in my garage now that I ride quite often.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, Spain was a crucible for off-road bikes. All of those marques that you've mentioned there, the Bultaco, the Ossa, and those magical names for the Mick Andrews and some of those great trials riders. I'm struggling to think of the GOV 132. Sammy Miller.
Yeah, Sammy Miller. He was the greatest. Sammy's a dear friend of mine, and when we came to do the Guggenheim exhibition, one of my first calls was to Sammy, and I said, Sammy, I don't want GOV 132 because that's the old trials. That was the end of an era in trials. I want where you change the direction of trials completely. I mean, without Sammy Miller and the Bultaco, the modern sport of trials would have gone in a different direction. So he said, yeah, sure. Sammy is from Belfast in Northern Ireland. I'm from Dublin, 120 miles away. You know, we speak the same language, so to speak, Anglo-Irish. And Sammy was fully on board. So we got his first competition Bultaco for that exhibition. I was very proud of that, to show that to a public that didn't necessarily know about, first of all, the sport of trials, but also the role that people like Sammy Miller had in developing a whole new area of motorcycle sport. So that was great.
Yeah, he's got a wonderful museum. I've had the joy of visiting that over there, and the young fella is still gets around over there at the museum and is happy to shake hands and have a smile on his face. He's a very generous man, that's for sure. So tell me, what motorcycles are in your garage right now, Ultan?
Well, more than I can ride at once, Bruce. I have everything from the oldest bike I have, a BSA ZB34, which is from 1949. And that's a thumper, you know, that's a solid rear end, and it starts first kick. It's a 500cc thing, and it's wonderful. I ride it around the mountain roads here in the Catskill Mountains, and I ride it into town if I need to get milk. Any excuse I can to start that thing up and ride it. And then everything up from there, I've got a couple of Norton Commandos is a particular favorite of mine. One of which was in the exhibition in the Guggenheim. I have a Ducati, of course. I love modern bikes. I love Ducatis. And so I have a Ducati. And that's when I need to press a button and start a bike, instead of kick it and start a bike, I go for the Ducati. You know, knock on wood, it never lets me down. I press the button, off it goes. And so that's my stable of bikes. But the most important bikes in my collection actually are the mountain bikes that are in the bike shed next door. We all ride mountain bikes. My wife will disappear for 2 or 3 hours on a mountain bike. I'll go off every day when the weather's good. And so we ride our mountain bikes. So we've got, plenty of mountain bikes, plenty of motorcycles. So when you come over, you can choose between a mountain bike or a motorcycle. It'll be your choice.
That's a wonderful invitation, and I'll have to take you up on that, Ultan, and maybe we'll do a little bit of both. I've got a couple of bicycles myself.
Good man.
Ultan, that's a great story of the machines you've got in your garage there, from the post-war rigid BSA ZB, and a 500 gives you just enough power to get around and keep in front of the traffic, to a modern Ducati where you can ride across the country if you want to. So is that the end of your motorcycle ownership story, or have you got another? If you were going to buy another machine, what might it be, Ultan?
Oh, no question about that. It'll be an electric motorcycle. And I have my eye on the cake. The cake is designed and made in Sweden by my dear friend Stefan Itterborn. It turns out that we knew each other well. We had written a book about design together 20 years ago when he was a design consultant at IKEA. And he then he set up a company to make mountain bike and skiing protective gear, helmets and gear, which he called POC, Piece of Cake, POC. And it's quite famous. And then he loves the outdoors, but he was always irritated that dirt motorbikes, left quite a big imprint on the landscape. So you get these deep ruts where a Honda 450 or, the kind of bikes I love to ride would leave quite a mark on the landscape. And he decided to create an electric mountain bike that would have a low impact. So it has tires that are very non-aggressive, much like a mountain bike tires. And of course, the electric engine is not quite as aggressive as a 2-stroke or a 4-stroke 500cc off-road engine. And it delivers its power very smoothly. And he created this bike called the POC, called the Cake, I beg your pardon. And I first saw it at Deus Ex Machina. Corby Tuckwell and Dare Jennings in Sydney, in Camperdown, just outside Sydney, have this amazing emporium of not only custom designed bikes, but fashions and so on that go with it. And it's an amazing place. And Corby and Dare and their colleagues are fantastic designers, and among Australians' most important designers, I would say. And I saw the Cake there, and I said to Corby, "My goodness, what is this?" And he said, "Well, it's a cake." And he told me. And then a little bit later, I get a phone call from Stefan Itterborn in Sweden, who says, "Ultan, you don't even remember who I am. And we've done a book together." And of course I did remember, but I didn't connect the cake with Stefan. And so that's great. And that's in the exhibition. And that's certainly going to be in my garage and my collection. And then there are so many, Bruce, there are so many brilliant little electric motorcycles that are being produced now from everywhere, China, America, Australia, that take advantage of the latest electric engine technology and also self-balancing technology, which I think is really extraordinary. And so I think one of those is in my future. I think my 13-year-old daughter is an excellent bicycle rider. I think she deserves to have an electric mountain bike, and I think there's one in her future too.
Well, electric seems to be the future. It saddens me that the exhaust note goes with it, although the impact on the environment is certainly one that we need to take into account. So, well, look, it's been great chatting with you about your history in motorcycles, and maybe we can explore the Guggenheim and QAGOMA shortly. So thank you very much, Ultan, and listen to Twist Grip Tales, like, subscribe, and check out Ultan here. He's a great man of design and vision, and with his foot firmly planted in the past, but electric. I'm not sure I'm there yet. Thank you very much, Ultan.
My pleasure, Bruce.